The search is on for a gunman after a police officer was shot in the chest.
My officer was hit, and he succumbed to his injuries. We need to find the person that did this.
A growing divide within the Democrat Party. Senator Franken's Democratic colleagues on Capitol Hill say they want to see what an official probe uncovers before joining calls for the senator to resign.
If they were smart, they'd get rid of him.
Democrat Kirsten Gillibrand told the New York Times she now believes President Clinton should have resigned.
This country had a reckoning over Bill Clinton's behavior.
Where's this coming from? What does it mean other than the end of the Clinton era?
Do you think it was a legitimate election?
I think that there are lots of questions about its legitimacy.
Judge Roy Moore remained out of sight, but his wife Kayla defended him on the steps of the state capitol.
Even after all the attacks, he will not step down.
What I ask you is Ambassador Kislyak in the room? Before I get started here, any Russians?
Yeah. Is this your favorite song?
You know, I don't know. I should admit this. I like Imagine Dragons. Radioactive, isn't that another one?
That's another. That's a good song.
Kind of awesome. Kind of fun.
You guys are so much hipper than me. I have no idea.
We have so much energy because you're here.
I know.
Rachel Campos.
Thanks,
we're so happy
Obviously,
to welcome you
Abby Huntsman out on maternity leave. Rachel Campos Duffy joining us for the first time. Oh, come on.
Oh, I'm sorry, Abby. I know you're watching. We miss you.
Ed,
I told her to
we miss
watch.
you very much. But
And
Rachel's
give me
going to be
tips.
here a bunch, as is Ed, and so we're at hour 2. And how you feeling?
Feeling good. Feeling good. You guys are the best co-hosts. Awesome.
Well, we have fun.
You say that to all the
Yeah.
co-hosts.
She does. She does. It's a universal
Heard you
trait,
say
no
that
matter
on
what.
Outnumbered.
You guys are better than Joy Behar.
That's
I
true.
did. She was my co-host.
She's been on The View. How many times have you done The
No,
View?
maybe 25 times.
That's a low bar for us, Ed, but
You've
we've
crossed
achieved
it.
Yeah, and talking about low bars. Hillary Clinton just won't leave the stage.
Yes.
I mean, we've been talking about this, and she is now jumping in on the Al Franken story, of course. But somehow she is finding a big difference from the Roy Moore story and actually finding a way to say that Al Franken is okay to her.
Yeah, he's already been held accountable. He's a friend, so he's good to go. Listen to Hillary Clinton on WABC yesterday.
Al Franken, is a friend of mine. I think we've got to, recognize that he agreed to an ethics investigation. It will go to the ethics committee. It will investigate whatever the situation was. I think that's the appropriate process because, I think that something like that coming into the public arena and Al's very quick acceptance of responsibility and apology and his willingness to be investigated and to take the consequences is the kind of accountability I'm talking about. I don't hear that from Roy Moore or Donald Trump.
So she's always got to bring it to Donald Trump no matter what.
But it's interesting. I mean, the excuse that she's giving Franken is the same excuse that the Democrats gave her husband, which is, listen, he's good on women's issues. He's good. He's a Democrat. So just kind of turn the page. Don't think about that. Just let him go.
It ultimately comes down. It's just like the Glamour magazine segment you did.
Right.
It's like we want to praise women if they agree with us in every segment, or if a guy is on our side, then we'll apologize for a behavior because he's so good on women's issues. An article caught our eye in the Washington Post. Kate Harding, a liberal writer, basically made that exact argument. Take a look at this. We'll read from it. Quote from the Washington Post. She writes, "I don't believe resigning from his position is the only possible consequence, or one that's best for American women. If we set this precedent in the interest of demonstrating our party's solidarity with harassed and abused women, we're only going to drain the swamp of people who, however flawed, still regularly vote to protect women's rights and freedoms." That is an apologist if I've ever
That's
read one.
the way a lot of Democrats justified in 97 and 98 not calling for Bill Clinton to resign. Well, he's okay on our issue, so if he makes mistakes, it's okay. But if a Republican makes a mistake, bam, you're done. And by the way, in terms of accountability, there's no evidence yet that the Senate Ethics Committee is actually going to do a thorough job.
Right.
There have been Democrats and Republicans who have gone before the Senate Ethics Committee because of various mistakes, allegations, and oftentimes it's like, okay, all good here. We didn't really see a lot of problems. So we'll see if there's accountability.
But to be fair, that is, what we're hearing also on the other side with Roy Moore. People saying, look, we have an election coming up. Don't like what Roy Moore is doing, but he's a Republican. So we're seeing it on both sides.
I think that's fair, but you've also seen 43 Republican senators come out and say that Roy Moore should drop out of the race.
And the RNC has pulled their money.
And the RNC, whereas not a single Democrat has said that about Al Franken. And as you said, Ed, you pointed out, Senate Ethics Committee let me be clear. It's a joke, okay? They've had 613 accusations in the last decade, and 0 senators have been found of wrongdoing. It means they're calling for a committee that will not hold them accountable.
And by the way, if Al Franken deserves his day in court, and he does, to go before the Senate Ethics Committee, the allegations have not been proven against Roy Moore. There's all kinds of troubling allegations, but it's not like he's been dragged before court. He hasn't been dragged before an ethics committee. So if you want to give Al Franken time to tell his side of the story, Roy Moore certainly deserves his side of the story as well.
And he did yesterday. There was a women for Roy Moore. His wife
came out, not very subtle either. I mean, she was wearing cross earrings, and I have to tell you, that's the power of a good political spouse. I thought she was, if you were conservative and you were wavering a little bit, I thought she was pretty convincing.
And I ultimately think the argument of let the Alabama voters decide is kind of winning out here. I mean, you can have anybody cast their judgment as a pundit or a politician. The voters will decide in about
It's interesting because we're talking about the election coming up in Alabama, the actual future, December 12th. Hillary Clinton, listen to this clip. She is still talking about the election that happened more than 365 days ago. Listen.
I think that there are lots of questions about its legitimacy, and we don't have a method for contesting that in our system. That's why I've long advocated for an independent commission to get to the bottom of what happened.
Wait, an independent committee? We have a special counsel.
How many commissions can we have?
We got committees. We got the House, the Senate.
Well, it's funny because, she talks about how, the election being illegitimate. I think what was illegitimate was the Democrat primary, which was basically rigged like a third world country election.
Yeah, I did say delegates, right?
They had super delegates, and then they had feeding questions to her. I actually think this election was one of the elections that made me believe again in the democratic process, because the guy who was the most unlikely candidate with the least amount of money, you had Jeb Bush, who was supposedly a shoo-in, and he crushed them all, and it was really a marketplace of ideas and campaign rallies, and the American people, or at least the Republican Party, decided.
I think that's why you're seeing such a reckoning right now. People are saying, hey, worst week for the Democrats in a long time, because they all expected the coronation of Hillary Clinton would happen. And that's when you get to lift up the rug and sweep all the garbage underneath because you've got the presidency. Now, it's still a year later, they're having to litigate that. I mean, think about the double standard of a Hillary Clinton that says that, but during the campaign, talked about it in a debate and tweeted, hey, President Trump, or candidate Trump, if you don't abide by the election, it's a threat to our democracy.
Horrifying, the idea.
Horrifying.
But now she won't accept the results a year later.
Right.
What's also interesting is we've talked about how the Democrats gained in the primaries. Hillary Clinton, benefited from having these superdelegates, and that propelled Hillary Clinton to be the Democratic nominee, and then she picked Tim Kaine as her running mate.
It was really her complete firewall.
Right. So all of a sudden, Tim Kaine comes out in the last 24 hours and says, I don't think we should have superdelegates anymore, even though it helped his running mate. He says, I have long believed, not recent, long, there should be no superdelegates. These positions are given undue influence in the popular nominating contest and make the process less democratic, small d. Is Bernie Sanders this morning just, spitting out his coffee saying, I was saying this a year and a half ago and nobody would listen? Well, how are they saying this after the fact?
Well, it's like he's kind of coming around the Republican side of things, right? Because Republicans believe in a fair fight and let the strongest candidate win. Their system has long been rigged, and I think this might be the end of that.
And long believed, to your point, Ed, how long? Like, back to the nominating process?
Right.
You didn't say that a year and a half ago.
You're like, happily, superdelegates, come to us. It's unbelievable. Well, let's be a little fair here. It's not clear that...
Wait, you want to be a little fair?
I'm the definition.
This is a big day. Rachel, you brought all kinds of new things.
Fair and balanced right here. The Republicans have their own questions and problems as it pertains to getting their agenda across. Listen, if you've got majorities in the presidency, you better get something done.
They didn't get health care done.
They did not get health care done. The House did. The Senate could not. The House has now passed tax reform, and it's now moving over to the Senate, and we're looking eventually here in the next couple of weeks at a full Senate vote. But some typical holdouts are there that could stand between this president and a real historic tax reform.
Yeah, you've got Bob Corker, who obviously has been in almost open warfare with the president. Jeff Flake, who's basically a never-Trumper and is now, basically stepping aside and really been lashing out at the president. Ron Johnson from your home state.
Right.
A little bit of surprise because he's now saying that he can't support the bill. And I'll let you talk about that after I get through these names. Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and John McCain. McCain, in particular, went after the president on health care. now also a holdout for now on tax cuts. But Ron Johnson from your home state.
Yeah, listen, he's a businessman, so he's really upset about how pass-through companies are not getting the same treatment as corporations. And, you know, he indicated in some interviews that, you know, he really tried to get the attention of Mitch McConnell on this and didn't feel like he was being listened to. And I think this is his way to do it. I don't think it's the best strategy. I don't think you want to show a crack.
Yeah.
You already see that list is long enough to really derail the Senate vote and this tax reform.
And you know what? Guys like Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, who have traditionally been those holdouts, you see them playing ball.
Yeah.
I'm sure they don't feel like this bill is perfect either. So it's frustrating to watch 3 of those on the list not up for re-election again, likely. And there's speculation that John McCain won't run again. Who knows? And then you've got Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. I mean, when's the last time they actually acted like a Republican?
But a lot of these senators that you see on the list, with the exception of Senator Johnson, are people who have been wrangling with the president. And you got to wonder if the president sort of regrets a little bit his strategy with them. Sometimes you get a little more with honey than vinegar.
Yeah, remember John McCain with the thumbs down on health care? You could see him maybe going that way on taxes. We'll
really?
see.
If your legacy has been, I ran for president as a Republican standard bearer in 2008. He ran on tax cuts.
And he ran on repealing and replacing Obamacare.
And he ran as a conservative every time he...
I mean, for the Senate, not for president.
You're right. He's always been a campaign conservative running on election year. And then you don't cut taxes? Man, that'd be a tough legacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
President wants that victory by the end of the year. We'll see if he gets it. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton says the whole Uranium One scandal has been debunked. Really?
Solved.
But will a newly revealed FBI informant change all that? Sara Carter is on the case. She's live next.
Plus, a piece of Trump history just sold. Wait till you hear how much someone paid for this cake. From the president's wedding.
Wow, is that a Mar-a-Lago cake?
Yeah, it doesn't sound very yummy. And we'll check back in with Rick. He's live at Santa's Wonderland at the Bass Pro Shop.
Ooh.
This Uranium One story has been debunked countless times by members of the press, by independent experts. This is such an abuse of power, and it goes right at the rule of law.
Hillary Clinton downplaying that probe into the Uranium One scandal, calling the whole story, as you heard, debunked. But will a newly revealed FBI informant change all of that? Joining us now is someone who knows more about this than anyone, I think, senior investigative reporter for Circa, Sara Carter. Good morning, Sara.
Good morning, Ed. How are you?
Good. Let's start big picture. Hillary Clinton says this thing has been debunked.
No, it has not been debunked. I mean, let's go all the way back to Peter Schweizer's book, you know, Clinton Cash, the New York Times writing a massive expose on this. It just has not been investigated. And I think that's what they're most afraid of. You know, either a special counsel or a prosecutor looking into this can really follow the money. And that's what they need to do. I mean, there was over $140 million that went into the Clinton Foundation, into those coffers, and there's other people coming out of the woodwork now who want to address this issue.
Yeah.
I mean, a leadership in Kazakhstan, people who have direct evidence of what was happening during that time. I say let an investigation pursue and see where it leads.
So, Sara, let's quick refresher, and then let's push forward on what's really new here. So for our viewers, the FBI in the Obama years was already investigating Uranium One. There were allegations of racketeering and bribery, as I recall it, Russians trying to buy influence here in the U.S. They were looking at whether there was influence with Clinton Foundation money, speech money that went to former President Bill Clinton. And now, among other people the FBI talked to, they had a confidential informant. And what's new is the Justice Department is letting Congress, in the weeks ahead, talk to that informant. What do you think we may learn?
Oh, absolutely. So the informant was with the FBI for more than 4 years. And prior to the approval of Uranium One, which happened in 2010, towards the end of 2010 in October, this informant had been providing all of that information at, as you said, kickbacks, bribery, all kinds of money laundering within the uranium industry in Russia. So I think what the informant is going to be able to provide is absolute documentation that the Russians that they were investigating at the time were directly involved with the Uranium One deal. And they'll be able to expose that. And that is something that right now we don't believe the CFIUS members who approved the deal in
panel,
2010. Yeah, the panel were aware of at that time.
Okay, so to wrap it up here, I got 90 seconds. The key in terms of Hillary Clinton. So I think it's important to our viewers that you're saying we haven't publicly heard from this confidential informant. He may have new information that could be troubling, but in fairness to the Clintons, what they're saying is there's no evidence that Hillary Clinton approved this deal. The CFIUS is that panel that went forward with the uranium deal, but she was the sitting Secretary of State at the time. So in the last minute here, tell me what we know and what we don't know about whether Hillary Clinton, whether her fingerprints were on this or not.
Well, all you have to do is look at this. She was, Secretary of State at the time. The Clinton Foundation was directly receiving donations from people that were very interested in this deal being approved. I think we need to take a step back and let the Justice Department do its job. If it's going to do its job, as Attorney General Sessions promised, they need to investigate this. They need to move forward. They need to hear what the informant has to say, and they need to look at the troves of documents that this informant has retained and will be willing to share with Congress in order to answer some of those biggest questions.
Democrats are saying it's debunked. Sara Carter has been following the facts from the beginning. We're going to continue to do that on this program. We appreciate you coming in, Sara.
Thank you, Ed.
Coming up, Senator Jeff Flake caught on a hot mic. Oh, hate when that happens. He's got some harsh words, yes, for President Trump.
Come the party of Roy Moore and Donald Trump. We are the toast.
Will be toast, he says. Is this really what the voters think? Dan Bongino doesn't think so. He's here next. And one of three Americans will not talk politics this Thanksgiving. It's just too divisive for them. So how do you avoid the trouble at the table? We have some tips to save your turkey day. I have a feeling Pete's going to talk politics at the Thanksgiving. Yes, I hear. He's shouting. You might not hear him. We're going to talk. We'll talk. Quick headlines. Roy Moore's wife, Kayla, defending her husband amid allegations the Alabama Senate candidate pursued sexual relationships with teenage girls when he was in his 30s.
Even after all the attacks against me, against my family, against the foundation, and now against my husband, he will not step down.
This comes as Alabama's Governor Kay Ivey says she'll still vote for Moore, even though she says she believes his accusers. Meanwhile, storms bringing snow and heavy winds to the West Coast, and it's now moving east. This all happening ahead of a busy holiday travel rush. Here you see drivers navigating through very dangerous road conditions in Colorado. Heavy rains and winds are expected from Washington, D.C. to Boston tonight into tomorrow. And in Washington, President Trump welcomes 18 NCAA championship teams to the White House to celebrate their successful seasons. But one was missing: South Carolina's women's basketball team. Coach Dawn Staley said back in April her team would go, but then they backed out. She says they're focusing on their current season instead. Pete?
Is right, Ed. Yes. Well, is this a familiar scene at your Thanksgiving dinner table?
Election, politically divided families cut their Thanksgiving celebration short by 20 to 30 minutes.
And a new poll says that 31% of people intend to avoid talking politics this year during the holidays. 21% will engage even if they know there's some disagreement on the issues.
So what can you do to avoid infighting at the Thanksgiving table? Here to give us some great advice, Dr. Jennifer Caudle, family physician and assistant professor at Rowan University. So listen, this is really interesting to me. My husband's a Republican politician. His family is a family of Democrats. So the car says
so
Bernie
you know firsthand.
Oh yeah, the bumper sticker says Bernie Sanders and Sean Duffy.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of families heading home for Thanksgiving this year, maybe bracing themselves, because there are a lot of families that are politically divided.
Sure.
I have family and friends myself, and I think they're kind of wondering what's it going to be like.
Yeah. Well, so do you avoid it altogether, or do you try to have the conversation and set some boundaries?
So I think that for some families, I'll be very honest with you, I think some families should just say no politics at all.
Oh, I thought you were going to say don't get together.
No.
Well, that's an option too.
No. This is Thanksgiving, so no, we want everyone to get together, and that's the point, right? This is Thanksgiving. We're talking about food and fellowship and family and friends and love. So the idea is to have a wonderful experience. Some families, though, and you know who you are, I'm talking to y'all, you know you shouldn't be talking politics. But I do think there's a lot of families who can talk politics and get through it and be okay. And I think the biggest thing is having a lot of respect for one another and coming at it, approaching the political discussion from a point of understanding. This is not about bullying or badgering. It's about understanding how your family members think.
Could you even have fun with it? Maybe like set some ground rules and have a moderator.
Yes.
And you got crazy Uncle Joe over here and crazy Aunt Jan over here, and there are different sides of the spectrum,
Yes.
and they kind of, it could almost be entertaining.
It could almost be entertaining, and I like the idea of ground rules. And, you know, for some families, they may say, okay, no politics except for at dessert. Maybe they have a time limit. Maybe they say, okay, we can talk politics, but we're not talking about this issue or this issue. And maybe you do have a moderator, somebody that steps in and you know, bangs the gavel and says, okay, enough.
I had a great, when I was reading through this, like I said, I love this topic. I thought, what if everybody was wearing sort of like one of those pilgrim hats or caps? And so then it's really hard to take that conversation really seriously if you're kind of in that.
Make yourself look goofy?
Yeah, make yourself look goofy. I don't know.
Well, that's
the other
interesting
thing I
idea,
found
yeah.
interesting was it said 25% of families prefer to talk about family gossip instead of, which I thought that always brings everyone together, right?
That's actually a good distraction, because I say if you need to get out of a political conversation, one way to do it is to redirect. So we're talking sports, we're talking pets, children, maybe some family gossip. I don't know. That will change the topic pretty quickly,
But
I think.
even if you're talking sports at this point, what if then crazy Uncle Joe goes, well, hope nobody kneels, and then it starts the whole conversation
Well, but
again.
see, this is the other thing too, and I'll say this also about families. You know, Thanksgiving and the holidays is often a time where people bring maybe new people into the family, right? Loved ones, new relationships, things like that. And I also say that if you know you come from a very politically charged family, and it's going to come up, and maybe you're the family that loves to just box it out at the table, let your loved ones know before they get to your house, you know, because it's really a big thing.
Give us some tips on how we can keep the spirit of Thanksgiving, like how we can set the tone to make sure it doesn't just immediately
It doesn't derail, and people don't like leave 20 to 30 minutes early. I actually heard of a girlfriend of mine, actually, she ate her dinner up in her bedroom because she couldn't stand being in the living room and being at the dining room table. This stuff really happens, people.
So you make such a great point. If you're a newcomer to the family, like maybe just take a little bit of time to figure out how the family you're going into does business, as opposed to coming in guns blazing.
Is. Yeah, for not only what you bring, but also to understand what you're going to be walking into.
Sure.
But I think the biggest thing you asked about, like, how do we keep the spirit of Thanksgiving? That's the biggest thing, is remembering the spirit of Thanksgiving. Yeah. This is the time. You do not want Uncle Joe walking home because he's pissed off. Yeah. You do not want your children eating their dinner in the living room or elsewhere. Yeah. You want the spirit of Thanksgiving. So it's about really making a good time for all.
Great stuff. Dr. Jennifer Cottle, thank you very much for your thoughts this morning. And very happy
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, we've got to move on now to a Fox News alert. 2 police officers murdered in 2 states. An urgent manhunt for the killers intensifying. Former NYPD officer Dan Bongino says Democratic policies are making the streets more dangerous, and we've got him next.
And you've heard of deep frying a turkey. Well, up next we'll show you how to make a new twist on a Thanksgiving tradition. Beer can turkey?
Beer can turkey.
Love
Can
it.
there be anything better?
That goes over well in Wisconsin.
I bet it does. We are back with a Fox News alert. A pair of manhunts intensifying right now for 2 cop killers in 2 states. Here are the 2 brave officers lost, 25-year-old Brian Shaw and 43-year-old Sean Suter.
Shaw was gunned down overnight near Pittsburgh after a traffic stop turned into a foot chase. Police say they found the suspect's car, but it was abandoned. Shaw had been on the force for less than 1 year.
In Baltimore, police still searching for Detective Suter's killers. The 18-year veteran killed Wednesday when an approaching suspect.
Police have no leads so far.
No, they have no leads. No, police have no leads, and they are offering a $215,000 reward for the information leading to his arrest.
Here to get some commentary on both of these, because he knows a whole lot about it, we're going to bring in Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent, former NYPD officer, host of The Dan Bongino Show, and author of Protecting the President. Dan, thanks for joining us this morning. Obviously a sober topic. When you've got these 2 killings in 2 cities, you've got Baltimore and Pittsburgh. First of all, what are these police forces doing, and what leads to something like this?
Well, chaos leads to something like this. I mean, when you prioritize a war on cops over a war on crime, sadly, this is what you get. And if I can just for a moment, guys and Rachel, Sean Suter, that was his name. I mean, we need to say those names. Whenever we have these terrorists or these killers, unfortunately, we have to report on them. We say their names. What about this guy's name? Sean Suter, naval officer, decorated detective. this is a guy who went to work every day. He didn't get to go on the gridiron in the NFL and play in front of tens of thousands of adoring fans and sign autographs. You know what he got to do? He got to walk down a dark alley. And you know what was waiting for him at the end of that dark alley? A bullet to his head. He's dead. He has 5 kids. 5 kids who will never, ever see him again. 5 children. He will never take another breath of oxygen. I want to take a moment to thank every man and woman in blue out there who puts on that uniform every day for no money and even less notoriety. Thank you for everything you do. These are the real American heroes.
Dan, you make such a great point. And, you know, you think about those children losing a father just a few days before Thanksgiving. But this happens throughout the year. It's not just around the holidays. It's especially tough now. But as you know, these law enforcement officials putting their lives on the line 365 days a year.
You know, I think what contributes to this, and I'm desperately under an emotional, obviously, topic, on an emotional topic. You're trying to be really reasonable about this and be very careful with my words. But I think it's been this effort by some on the radical left, some. It's not a Democrat thing. It's definitely a radical left thing, though, to depersonalize the cops, to make them some kind of subhuman species out there. You know, things like, think of the words they use, guys. This is not done by accident. You know, with the Black Lives Matter protest, where they said things like pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon, calling them pigs. I mean, that's an obvious effort to dehumanize these people. These are dads. These are moms. These kids are going to sit around Thanksgiving, only have memories of their father from this point on. Yeah. Guys, this is a real tragedy. This guy's dead. He's never going to take another breath of oxygen again for you. For what? For $50,000 a year? Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, these are the best of us. They deserve a pat on the back, not a slap in the face.
Yeah, well said.
Amen to that.
Well said. Well, we're going to turn to another topic we want to get your comments on as well. There was a hot mic moment with Senator Jeff Flake, who we know is not running for re-election, and basically went on a book tour to criticize this president. Well, he was caught being quite candid, as he has been. Take a listen to what Jeff Flake was heard saying.
Come the party of Roy Moore and Donald Trump. Well, we are the post.
And I'm not throwing smoke at you, but you're the guy that could, just for fun, think how much fun it would be just to be the foil, you know, and to point out what an idiot this guy is.
Okay.
You know, anyway.
I'm just going to let you comment, Dan.
Yeah, you want to... this is embarrassing. You're the guy on the hot mic who he's talking to goes, hey, Jeff Flake, you're the guy. Note to Jeff Flake, you weren't even the guy in your own state. You can't even win re-election. I mean, does he realize that they are right about one thing? The party will be toast if they follow the Jeff Flake model of chaos and open borders. I mean, has there been a Republican proposal that has been so roundly rejected than the Gang of 8 amnesty program that Jeff Flake and his buddies on the so-called Republican side tried to force on America? I mean, really, has there been a proposal that has resulted in so much backlash amongst real Republican voters? I mean, what is this guy not? He's the guy? No, he's not. Jeff Flake, if you're listening, trust me, you are definitely not the guy. Yeah. The party will be
you could be the foil. You could be the foil that gets 1% if you want to be. Yes. Dan Bongino.
Dan Bongino, always fired up. He's going to be one of those guys who'll be talking politics even at the Thanksgiving table. He never stops.
You know me well, don't you?
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. All right, now we're going to turn to some additional headlines. Anarchists accused of vandalizing a Philadelphia police station. The culprits shattering windows, including a cruiser, with a hammer lodged into the windshield. Glass bottles filled with red paint thrown against the building. A dozen people wearing black masks caught on camera running from the scene. No injuries reported and no arrests have been made yet. Plus, Attorney General Jeff Sessions maintaining a sense of humor despite the ongoing Russia probe.
Is Ambassador Kislyak in the room? Any Russians? Anybody been to Russia? Got a cousin in Russia or something.
Cousin in Russia. The remarks drawing big laughs at Friday's Federalist Society convention in Washington, just days after Sessions testified on Capitol Hill about contacts with Russian officials. Plus, one lucky bidder buying this piece of history, an individual cake handed out at President Trump and the First Lady's 2005 wedding, auctioning off for more than $2,000. $2,000. The chocolate truffle dessert, donning a buttercream rose on top, was made as a take-home souvenir for wedding guests. The actual cake was a $50,000 seven-tier cake that had too much wire for guests. You know, there was so much wire inside the cake you couldn't even eat it, but you could eat this one if you want for $2,000. And those are your headlines. Ed, Rachel, over to you. I'll be there in a second.
Nice job, Pete. You need to go over here. There's some food, okay? Alert. Looking to impress your family and friends with something new this Thanksgiving?
Here we have a twist on some of those traditional favorites from Chef George Duran, author of Take This Dish and Twist It. You have some great stuff here.
Oh, my goodness.
Let's look at that. We don't have a lot of time, so let's go quick.
So we're going to make a wet rub here using spices. I like using Spice Island spices. And what I like to do is make beer can chicken. Take a large can of beer. Put it up the turkey, you know, have it upright. So this is a beer can turkey instead of the chicken. And then you go ahead and take the wet rub. The wet rub is very simple. I'm just going to show you guys what it is. Very simple. It's coriander, a little garlic powder, paprika. Smell that paprika. This is Spice Island spices. These guys
delicious.
are
I love to cook, so I love
spices, handpicked.
This is like Spanish paprika.
That's exactly right.
What does the beer can do? Just gives it a lot of flavor?
So the beer can gives a little bit of liquid inside of it, and also keeps it moist. And the things run dry. Look at this. When I'm finished with it, look how gorgeous that is. And you should taste this too, because that's really important.
Let's move on to the stuffing, because these are stuffing muffins. This is amazing.
Absolutely. So you take regular cornbread, you crumble it up, and then the most important thing is the Jimmy Dean Premium Fresh Roll Sausage that you kind of cook in there. Give that a taste. It has sage already inside of it. What I love about it is that they use like this unique signature blend of spices. Mix it up, put it in these muffin tins, throw it into the oven, and everybody has their individual little
because you can't stuff that because that's got the beer can.
If you take a potato, it looks pretty boring. It's the same old deal. So how do you twist it?
Hasselback potatoes, very simple. You kind of slice them up very interestingly like this, and then you end up putting a premium butter, something that has like been churned fresh.
So it soaks into the potato.
That's right, 100%. Real cream salt in there too. Butter, it's the butter with the elk on it. It's called Challenge butter. It's phenomenal. So you put a little bit of butter, thyme, garlic, any spices you want in there, cook it for half an hour, take it out, and then right before you serve it, you cook it for another half an hour, add more butter in there, because really without the butter and Thanksgiving, I mean...
And you need cranberries.
without butter.
No, the butter is the secret. Now, the cranberries, this is a beautiful thing. It's America's original superfood. So what I like to do, actually, is there's this contest on cranberryfriendsgiving.com, and you submit your favorite recipes using cranberries. This one is boiled in cranberry juice, fresh cranberries, a little bit of sugar, and then I take a mold that is shaped like a turkey.
Where do you get that?
Online, everywhere, of course. And then this is what I'm going to put at cranberryfriendsgiving.com. This right here, I'm going to submit my turkey mold. You set this up on the table and you serve it like a side dish of cranberries. Simple as that. It's a thing of absolute beauty.
All of it looks beautiful and delicious. Thank you so much.
Great job. Thanks for coming in. Happy Thanksgiving.
Well,
coming up,
food for the rest of the show.
Looking pretty good, but we're going to talk politics too. President Trump, fresh off that trip to Asia where he reached out to China and countries that are playing nice. Does the communist nation have plans to take over the world? We'll discuss.
Absolutely. Plus, Alan Dershowitz, Geraldo Rivera, I'm Chewing, David Webb, and the man who killed Bin Laden, Rob O'Neill, all here live.
Nice job.